Hi, this is continuing the discussion beyond the book about woke culture, their idea of the social construct, and their ideas of their all total worldview. This is Mama Bear Apologetics Guide to Sexuality talks about this in chapter 1, but today we're going beyond the book in order to finish our discussions. The last time, you may remember, we talked about the social construct. And remember that diagram. Okay, now we're going to talk about the flaws in it and the things they cannot afford to believe, which we do. First of all, in the social construct, if you notice that picture of the stick figure, there was no discussion of outside truth, only a detailed description of their way of thinking about what they perceived. So their big emphasis is not upon what's real out there, it's about what they think about it. And that is not good wisdom. Good wisdom is to be able to understand what is true about reality out there, and to look for the truth and search for the truth in the reality that we see and hear and feel, and then to guide our thinking to be in concert with what's real out there before we reach conclusions, so that we have a balance between what we think and what's out there. Woke culture is lopsided, all concerned about its own constructed reality. For instance, in biology, and they're talking about gender. They talk about gender being all in the head. No. Gender begins in biology. It's really quite definite. You are male or you are female. You just look at your body parts and you can tell the difference between one and the other. And there are a set of feelings and a set of different senses of awareness associated with each of those biological realities, which are truth. But they want to emphasize what they think and feel and want to think and feel about it. That is a flaw. The second thing is they don't believe that there's any such thing as truth, and so in their illustrations, they don't talk about truth. They talk about reality. Reality is what they perceive, but there's no such thing as truth. That's going to lead to some serious consequences in terms of what they cannot accept and what destroys a civilization. Thirdly, they do not accept any spiritual information. You may remember on the stick figure, I added the part around the crown of the head to represent the spirit of a person, and an arrow coming down with God reaching down. That represented God reaching down to a human being who was receptive in their spirit to God's spirit, so that the person can get to know God spiritually, their spirit to his spirit to their spirit. So here's what, and by the way, I want to remember something else. If you look at the Gospel of John, chapter 14, Jesus says something that's really important here. He's about to leave this earth because he's about to be crucified. He knows that. And he's going to come back again, but he will ultimately leave in the resurrection. So he's calming he's comforting his disciples, saying, look, I'm going to go away, but I'm going to send you another comforter, who is the Spirit of truth. He uses those words, Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. And then he explains why. Jesus says this, for they do not see him. That's sensory information, which is all they deal with. That's why they can't perceive him. which they cannot, because they cannot see him and they cannot know him. That means interact with him, spirit to spirit. They refuse to perceive him because they refuse spiritual information through their spirit to God's spirit. But, says Jesus to the disciples, you know him because he dwells with you and will dwell in you. That is a promise to every believer in Scripture. That's another subject area we can't go into now, but that's the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 16 and 17. Now here's what the woke culture refuses to believe. This is really crucial. Number one, they refuse to believe objective, natural truth, independent of human beings. In other words, if a human being doesn't talk about truth or reality, it's not reality. That's just, that's ridiculous. There's a universe out there that's reality, whether or not people perceive it. But more importantly, for culture, for human beings, they cannot accept the Declaration of Independence. When Thomas Jefferson said these words, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Woke culture cannot accept that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Isn't that what we expect in our culture? The woke culture cannot accept that because they cannot accept the idea of objective truth. Therefore, because a right, when it talks about rights, what is a right? A right is the valid claim of one person on the duty of another. The valid claim means the true claim. If you don't believe in objective truth, if you don't believe in absolute truth, truth that is truth of its own being, independently of what you think about it, a self-evident truth, then you cannot believe in the idea of a right. There are no rights in the woke culture. The woke culture may talk about rights, but their way of thinking denies the possibility of a right. They cannot accept independent, natural truth, independent of human beings. Secondly, they cannot accept this idea. They cannot accept that reason and logic are universally valid or true for all thinking people in all areas of knowledge. So, they cannot accept, there's a problem with that, is that they cannot accept that laws are truth, that are equally applied to all people. In other words, if there's a speeding law, it ought to apply to everybody. Well, according to them, laws don't necessarily apply to everybody. Look at what they want to do with the southern border. They don't want laws to apply to those people coming across the southern border. They want those laws to apply to somebody in Europe or somebody from Australia, perhaps, but not to people coming up through the southern border because of a special reason of some sort. So because that's true, then they cannot accept the idea of equal treatment under the law, and equal treatment under the law is the basis of justice in a society. They can't accept it logically, based on what they choose to believe. Thirdly, they do not accept the idea that human nature is present at a baby when it's born. Yeah, They believe that human nature is developed as the child grows. Well, certainly human nature matures. But there's human nature in the baby when the baby arrives. Matter of fact, there's some human nature being developed in the baby in the womb. When a child comes out with a vagina or a penis, there's more than that vagina or penis. There's androgen, there's estrogen present in those two bodies in differing amounts. More androgen for the male, more estrogen for the female, and that affects the brain, and that affects their growing up and how they're going to mature, and what the nature of their maturity. So, but they don't believe that that child has human nature at birth, and that may be the justification for some people to believe that they can kill a baby within 28 days after it's born, and they're justified. Finally, they do not believe that language reflects reality outside of itself. What does that mean? Is, well, language should reflect the truth, but they don't accept truth because you should speak the truth. But language does reflect reality outside of itself. If it doesn't, how could you tell your kid, tell me the truth? Let's have some fun. If someone tells you, as a postmodernist or a woke person would have to tell you if they're being honest, that there's no such thing as truth, absolute truth, then I have a question for you. If a guy tells you that he cannot tell you the absolute truth, why would you believe him? See you next time.